Let's see here. Okay, I'll do a reading here real fast. The fact that you were born means, the fact that you were born and will die means your life is transitory. Although it's hard to see when you're in it, none of this life is real. Reality is unchanging. You want to find that unchanging essence that is with you. You will not find it with your mind because the mind exists in the world of movement, and the mind can only see that which changes. To know that which is unchanging, you will have to be the silence behind your thoughts. In fact, the realization that you are this silence is referred to as enlightenment. In stillness, one finds that which is unchanging. When one is established in this silence, there is an unending sense of peace. It is not a temporary state. It is not a state at all. States come and go. It is a universal presence which cannot be reduced to a personal experience. Its nature is unchanging. Its nature is eternal. And yet it is none of these things. It exists beyond any description you might place on it. It is described here so you might recognize what it is and what it is not. The one who understands these words is the one who veils the truth from itself. When the one who pretends to be you is demoted, that which you are shines through. As you begin to see how unreliable your personal reality is, you start moving away from it. As you do, be sure to give your full attention to that which exists before your thoughts. This is your path home. If you devote yourself to the silence will devote itself to you. Then you will not need these words or your concepts to know who you are. Yeah. So more and more, I want you all to be aware of the place where your thoughts come from. Instead of attaching yourself to your thoughts and the feelings, put your concentration on the place where they arise from. There is a stillness that is always with you, and it's just that you have attached yourself to the movement. And if you allow yourself to not be distracted by the movement and to stay with that place where all the movement comes from, the more you do this, if you become devoted to this silence will befriend you. That stillness will befriend you. And when it does, it makes all the rest of this stuff seem like nothing. So what I wrote about afterwards is similar to this. It has to do with how you get distracted in desires and such. Okay, so the mind wants this and that. The mind has its desires. Of what value are the desires of an illusion? When you attach yourself to the mind, You are obligated to attend to its desires. You are then personally invested in the mind's mission to secure what it wants. When desires are fulfilled, there is pleasure. When they are not, there is pain. You are so deep into it at this point that you believe these consequences are happening to you. In my case, a desire might arise, but no one associates itself with it. Maybe maybe the desire is fulfilled and maybe not. Nobody cares. Maybe there is a sensation of pleasure or pain. Nobody takes it personally. There is an overall sense of peace that pervades everything. This is reality. Any other sensations like pleasure and pain are transitory. They are nothing more than experiences and cannot hold a candle to the stillness which is everything. You are using a candle to guide you through the cave of the ego. When you step out of your cave and come into the sunlight, you will no longer need your candle. In fact, you will no longer live in a world where needs and desires have relevance. When the who that you are is everything, what could you possibly need? So that's what I'm trying to describe, is when you are finally befriended by that stillness, that silence, everything's different, you see, than these things that the body wants, the mind wants, this and that. Okay, it can go on if it needs to, but it's got nothing to do with you, and it certainly doesn't affect you. So if things work out, great. If things don't work out, great. Everything's the same because you're living in this sense of peace with everything, so it doesn't really matter. And really, this is such the mind and body's concepts, experiences, is a very minor thing compared to that awesome sense of stillness, which really is everything. It is just everything. And so I'm using the word stillness, but I also use, along with that, the word silence. They're descriptions. It's more than that, though, and there's no way to really put a word on it, but it's there. And so each of you, throughout your day, in your spare time, notice where the thoughts come from. Notice where the feelings come from. Notice what happens when you breathe in between the breaths. Notice the basics of life, the heartbeat, the breathing. Just feel it. And as you feel it, you will get the sense, I think you will get the sense of where it comes from. That stillness, that silence, because you're totally embraced by it all the time. But when you attach yourself to those thoughts and the feelings and the body and the sensations and all of it, when you attach yourself to it and think of them as things that are happening to you, then you lose your perspective. You see, so I want you all to get your perspective back by going to source. That's all it is. Just going to source. You don't have to do anything to do it. You just have to stop doing all the shit you've been doing. If you just cease identifying, if you just stop, what will be there is the stillness. It's just you're busy doing stuff. But if you just stop, what is will become totally clear, and make that something that you do on your daily, all of the time that you can. There's some times where you're busy and you have to be doing this and that, and you don't have time for this shit. Okay, fine. But there's lots of other times when you can really be noticing. You see, I've always said that I don't believe in this. It's nice to have a habit of meditation, might be useful, but meditation is, I've always felt it. It's something that needs to happen all the time. All the time. So all the time, you should be just sitting back. Okay, a thought comes, let it go. This happens, let it go. It's just a process of just being. Okay, and that would be the ideal way to live. I'm speaking from personal experience. So you just live that way and let all this come and go. You don't need to attach yourself to anything. And if you do, just notice that and let that go too. So, okay, that's my bit.
So Ananta,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure my volume was up.
It's perfect.
Okay, good. So I guess it's fitting you talk about stillness, because that's the word I've been using a lot. When I'm really connecting with that sense of oneness in throughout the day, and of course connecting to that sense of everything ever expanding, limitlessness, I guess you'd call it. So is that, and then when I'm doing that, of course, I'm still aware there's me sitting in a chair or wherever I am. So I guess my question is that something, and because I know you're a busy man through the day or through the night or whenever you're awake, is that pervasive sense of just oneness always there, even though you're focused on menial tasks, for example?
Yes, it's always there. And to be honest with you, no one makes note of it. I'm only doing this for your benefit and trying to describe it so that you have at least a concept of what it is. But when it's actually happening, it's all that's happening. So there's really, now you're doing it and you're basically mimicking the truth. And but you're still doing it. And that's where it starts. But when it's actually happening, there's no longer anyone doing it. So there's no, the actual thing is not an experience. But as long as there's a me involved, then there'll always be an experience, you see? So the actual thing is so matter of fact and just normal and nothing spectacular like you would imagine. But it is,
Right.
because, I remember what it was like to live not in peace. But living in peace is effortless. And it's not a big deal when that's all there is.
Right.
It's only a big deal when it's like a free sample or something that's unusual. But if it's all there is, it's just like the natural state. That's all. So yeah.
So when I've been remembering throughout the day, and going into that silence, I mean, what's been really clear to me the last few weeks even, is that haven't been interested in words anymore, just interested in being in that silence or stillness. And it became very clear to me that there's really absolutely nothing to do. However, does that mean I'm still just mimicking what you're talking about? Is that sense of being just with that oneness, but there's no real thoughts going on per se? Is that different than what you're describing as what is happening for you all the time?
No, it sounds pretty close. And I'm thinking that the only thing is that after it happens, there's a me trying to figure out what it is. But when
Right.
it's happening, I get the feeling there is no me at all, and everything just is. And then afterwards, there's like someone trying to analyze and figure it out and understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so that's all that's going on. But in the moment when it's happening, it sounds pretty clean to me.
Okay.
So that's just.
I guess so. I just want to know what like in your experience, and I know you can't really put it into words, and you can't really understand it.
Pretty good at it.
But but just wanted to know what is the palpable experience you're having throughout the day or throughout.
It's pretty ordinary, and
Ordinary.
the one thing I would say is, so the mind is very efficient, and it's not doing any of the extraneous bullshit. Or if it does, it goes like one sentence. No one goes after it, so it's like fishing, and there's no fish. No one nibbles at it. But everything just is basically the consistent what's going on, okay? And then there's still things that need to be done, and there's still things, that distinction between the working mind and the thinking mind, where you need a mind to do certain things in this world. It's very useful for that. But there's no, there's no identification anymore with anything. So it's not like I'm identified with oneness. That doesn't happen. There's no, and there's no like thought. There's no thought or feeling that I feel personally connected to at all. And if it goes on, it goes on, but nobody cares about it, and no one gets involved in it. It's like that. So it's just a different quality of living than I used to have when I was a seeker and prior to that.
Right.
So I think you're on the cusp here. Like what you're describing is exactly right. There's no words for it. But then what happens after that, the mind comes in to try and figure out what that experience is, you see? And you see, so what the mind does is it tries to turn that thing that wasn't an experience into an experience, because when the mind can do that, it can possess it. And this is not, it's not possible for the mind to possess. So when the mind is doing that, you want to see what the mind is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to source,
Right.
Mind is just doing its job. Okay, so the mind is taking possession of this thing, because that's what it does. That's how it feels safe and in control and can understand. All these things are limitations, and you don't have to. You just catch it when it happens, you see? So here's what goes on. You have a moment of stillness where you're just being, basically not doing anything. And then you see the mind come in and try and claim it. in some way, or understand it, which is another form of claiming it, and just catch the mind. Catch the mind doing that and just don't get involved. So it just goes from one sentence, well, it's kind of like this, I was doing, and then just stop and return to that stillness, you see? So that process of stopping, just you want to make it very thorough, very thorough. So and catching these details is important, because the ego will exploit any area it can to maintain its position as master of your virtual reality. That's its job. So it's just doing its job, but your job now is to catch it. So now I know that what I'm saying is the ego is catching the ego, but
Yeah.
that's all right, because here's the deal. When the ego is exposed, when you can see the ego, all of it, it can't fool you anymore, and its magic won't work. So it'll just become less and less effective in its job of creating a credible virtual reality. And so each one of these episodes where it's there for you, it's what it is, and then the ego's coming in, every time you catch it and expose it for what it is, the ego becomes more and more transparent. Did I read this? I don't think I did. There's, might have read it last talk, but I don't think so. Maybe I did. Did I read the one about the living in a glass house last talk? Maybe
I
not.
don't remember. Maybe not.
It's the analogy fits with this. So, okay. Who suffers? The Buddha said, life is suffering. All of us have experienced suffering, so it is not an unfamiliar concept. Some deal with their suffering well, and others are overcome by it. It is my concept that suffering is inherent in the struggle of the me to get what it wants and keep away what it doesn't. Nisargadatta described this as movements between desire and fear. Imagine what it must feel like to see yourself as separate from God, to think that you have to fend for yourself to protect this fragile body, which is destined to die. Kind of sucks, don't it? Suffering is the price one pays to keep the illusion of individuality going. And this is the key. Any sense of separation is purely illusional. You only imagine yourself to be separate. You are not. What makes your heart beat? What causes you to breathe? And how is it that you are aware of your existence? All of the basics of life are not in your hands. And the source of life is the same for everyone. This is where the theory of separation falls apart. Your life as an individual is just a made-up story which you believe, and that doesn't make it true. You are suffering with the lies you have convinced yourself are true. And the one who suffers is purely imaginary. But the ego is very tricky. The ego uses its suffering as proof of its legitimacy. You wouldn't feel so strongly about something if it wasn't real, would you? You would. Keep your perspective. The suffering of an imaginary character is not a big deal. The one who pretends it's a big deal is simply lying to you. Stop believing the ego's made-up stories. It's the ego's job to convince you of its legitimacy. It's your job to see through the ego's charade. Now, I am aware that this is the ego calling out the ego for being such a liar, but that is okay. If you get the ego to fess up to its tricks, then it will not be able to fool you, parentheses, itself, so easily. An honest ego loses its power to conceal the truth from you. Think of this as a good cleaning. You are living inside a glass house, which has been painted so it looks solid to you. But when you remove the paint, you can see what lays beyond the house. And in time, you come to realize that your glass house is really quite fragile. So scrub away. It was the end that I thought was, this is the thing. So you continually watch what the ego's doing and see it. Like, don't be fooled by it. The thing about the ego loves to trick you. And it loves to get you to believe that whatever it's doing is real. If you continually call yourself out on whatever you are getting involved with your thoughts and actions and feelings, if you continually do that, then it's like cleaning that glass house. It becomes transparent. And eventually you see that really this thing that seems so solid to you isn't solid at all. And it's really, really built on a very flimsy foundation, you see? But it'll get away with it as long as you let it. So you continually refine, get every nook and cranny of that ego exposed. And not in a bad way, the ego's just doing its job. And you are doing the job of keeping the ego clean, straightforward and clean. And eventually, so this is basically, this is like a final cleaning for the ego. The ego's cleaning itself, really. And once it's done, the ego can do whatever it wants because it's totally transparent. It's got nothing to do with you. Right. You can be well beyond that. And, it doesn't really matter. So, so more and more, do your work, stay with that stillness, and then watch how the ego responds to it. Catch it when it happens, and always catch the ego, because the ego wants to fill any void. So anytime you are in a state where the ego is not present, the ego wants to fill that void right away. You see, and it wants to fill it with itself, with its thoughts and its feelings and its concepts and everything else. And so you just watch how it all works. And don't get involved. You don't have to fix the ego, you see. But it would be nice if it was just cleaned up, if you could see it for what it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you're explaining all this, because I probably spent equal amount of time remembering who or what I'm not as I am trying to remember who I am, the essence of who I am.
Yes.
Whether it's just, the things that come up in daily life, where it could be stuff on the news, it could be things going on in our business, et cetera, et cetera. And then, so I catch myself realizing, oh, well, here I am. I'm getting involved, and that's not who I am. And then remembering that, and just seeing that all of that is just all stuff.
Right.
It's not what's real.
Exactly. But it's just as important to know what's fake as it is to have an idea of what's real, because really what's real you can't know here anyway. You see, you just have concepts and understandings, and that's not what it is. But you can know intellectually, you can understand who you're not.
Exactly, right.
Because it lives in illusion land, and in illusion land, there's understanding. So that's something you're all set up, you got all the equipment for.
Right.
And the thing about the ego is it's odd the way it happens. You see, you just have to picture like a magician, you know, an illusionist. When you see how the illusion's done, it just it's nothing anymore. It basically just disappears. It has no power to amaze you. It's something that like just amazes you, and then once you know how it's done, it has no more power. And the mind
Mm.
is like this because it's an illusion. When you really, really see it for what it is, when you can really see it clearly, it disappears, which is a handy thing, you see, because when you are complete in this process of seeing it, it's gone. That's what happens. I mean, in my case, that's what happened. The Night Writings, that book was all about finding every nook and cranny of the ego and being brave enough to go in there and see all of it. Because some of it really is designed so you never see it.
Mm.
You see, and that's how it works. That's how it keeps its magic going, through its secrets. And once all the secrets are gone, or a very high percentage are gone, it becomes transparent. Basically, it's no longer an obstacle. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. So that's, you know, the subtitle to that book, Night Writings, was How to Make Something That Doesn't Exist Disappear.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm getting through your writings.
Good.
Yeah, they're excellent.
Well, thanks.
But,
I think they've done, but I always think that.
and it's interesting to read them because it is what you talk about all the time, but it's just reading it. By reading it, I'm hearing it differently.
Yes.
And like we are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm glad they're useful. Mm. I'll read one more. It's very brief. I wrote a bunch of short ones because I didn't have much time. There's an imposter claiming to be you. Someone has stolen your identity and claimed you as their own. You are a victim of identity theft. Worse than that, you have been caged inside a body where you are serving a lifetime sentence, all for the crime of believing you were born. I thought that was funny. Hmm. Hey, Barbara, is your air conditioner working?
Yes, our air conditioning is running.
Oh, because I saw the fan going.
Yeah, that's a hot flash.
Oh, we'll fix that.
I could be sitting in a refrigerator and still feel hot.
This is the wrong time of year for that shit.
Oh boy, is it ever. So last night I was listening to Nisargadatta, and I heard him say, I'm going to try to paraphrase it, be passionate about finding your passions. Something to that effect. He was talking about, it was in the context of just exactly what you were saying now about investigating every single aspect of your life, investigating it, watching it, being aware of it, and especially the passions, because it's the passions that drag you off into away from yourself, your true self.
Well, I think what he was saying is be passionate about knowing who you are.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like, take all that passion, put it into that one thing, and that'll make it work for you. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does take that, see? It takes that level of concentration and earnestness, sincerity, whatever word you want to put to it, one-pointedness. It takes that because, you know, this ego just ain't going to just give up. Go, oh, you got me, ha, bye. No, it's not going to work like that. It's more challenging than that. And if you're not paying attention, the ego is well designed to fool the mind. It really is well designed. It is the mind. It can fool the mind. It's all this circular, you know, incestuous, horrible thing. It's you have to be really, you have to be real strong about this. So, you know, there was this, you know, leading right into another short writing. It was, there are abundance of teachings here. Will you take them to heart? If they ring true to you, apply them to your everyday. Will you do this now? Nothing will happen until you honor these teachings. Here are the deepest truths. If you know this to be so, apply them. Look at your life and see the truth of these teachings in your life. See what is fake. See what is real and what is fake. Look at your thoughts and find out where they come from. Do this consistently. Do it now. What are you waiting for? You see? So this is it. You know, it's like this is your chance. Every moment is your chance. But as soon as you get serious about this, it won't be long, okay? This is true for everyone. This is, now, Nisargadatta, he said, he went, saw his guru told him all this shit, same kind of stuff I'm talking about. And he took it really seriously. And in all his spare time, he applied what his guru said. And he was really on it. And he used all of his spare moments with that. And he said within a few years, it was done. You see, and so this is all it takes. And in my case, you know, I had been at it for a long time, for a couple of decades. But I got serious about it, really super serious the last year. The last year, I just made a solemn commitment that I was not going to forget anymore, because I had done that long enough. I had, been with, Baba and Ramesh. I had spent a lot of time with them, got really solid about everything. And then I would come home and I would forget. I would start working and I would just forget. And I just said, I'm not going to forget. I'm not going to forget this. I'm not going to forget anymore. And so I made that commitment. And that way, the moment I did forget, I would just remember. And it was just a year, really, where I just got totally solid about it. And I also got really, really solid about knowing who I was not. Every nook and cranny of that ego. Because I figured nothing was going to happen. So I might as well get to know what I was living with. And I didn't know, but turns out you get to know the ego well enough, it disappears. So that's all it was. It wasn't like the enlightenment happened. It was like the illusion just disappeared. And then what was left is what's here. What's always been here, you see. So, but in all of your cases now, it's like, get serious. Get serious, do it now. We're like the epicenter for this pandemic now. It's like, get serious now. Time's limited. Okay, just remember. That's all it is, just remember. And make the commitment to remember. And that's it. Make it a solemn commitment, you see?
Well, there's nothing else to do.
That's correct.
Canceled everything.
Ah!
This whole year is canceled.
Ah!
So we might as well do it.
Exactly. I like your attitude.
I know, the world's falling apart. So all this illusion you're talking about is dissolving right as we speak.
Yep.
And so why do I get this idea about being a light worker? Have you heard that concept before? Light workers are supposed to help the planet and help the, do we have any responsibility for helping stabilize or bring love to the situation that's happening? Because it seems really dire.
Well, if you're really moved to do that, bravo. Good. My sense has always been that if you can find peace within yourself, then you actually radiate that peace out toward the universe. Okay? So if it were me looking at you, it is just find that inner peace, find that stillness that is around you all the time, and simply be in that stillness, and it will reflect outward, and it'll do whatever it needs to do out there in the world. You see, for others or for situations. And you don't have to be concerned with it, okay? And also, the chaos in the world and the difficulty in the world ought to be a clue that maybe it's a good time to go within. You see, because the outside isn't working out as being such a good distraction anymore. You see, no. So just use that to help direct you inward.
been saying I'm getting really good at doing nothing.
Huh? Well, good.
But
Now,
that's kind of the essence of what the practice is being okay with yourself and nothing.
right. But you understand that you can't actually do nothing.
Of course.
Okay. I know you're just putting it into words for me.
But I'm not out running around with friends, going here and there. The distractions have been limited quite a bit.
Yeah, well, you know, we'd all be saying goodbye to you if you were doing that. This is not the time for, you know, social gatherings and huggings and all the nice, warm, cuddly feelings that we used to have.
I know. What happened to the hug circles?
Hey, what happened to the potlucks? That's what I want to
Right.
know.
I know.
Yeah. And darshan, personal darshan.
I never thought I'd be saying those were the good old days. Like,
Yeah.
and that be a focus.
Well,
It's just mind-boggling.
it's great. It's so great. This is such an opportunity for you. I mean, to be in this situation with your personality and just the way you're wired up, it's like, hey, you got no choice. Either go within or suffer.
Or throw a tantrum.
Like I said, suffer.
But I am very grateful that we have been with you for so long, because there's that foundation. I think I would be totally lost without the support.
Well, I know some of it's rubbed off on you.
Mhm.
Ananta,
Yes.
um, I was wondering, I think a lot of us in this whole maybe, awakening process or effort have a fear of losing something if it would happen. And I'm not sure what that is. I mean, a fear of a personality or control or something. Could you speak about that? That what it is this fear might be?
I think it might be the ego.
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
So here's the thing now. The ego likes to think it's in charge. The ego likes to think it's you. If you're in a process which is transitioning the ego away from being in charge, well, then that's scary for the ego. It makes the ego feel very uncomfortable. You see, so that would be a natural feeling. So really the test is, can you just face that fear without getting involved? You see? It's just fear, it's just a sensation. So the truth is, this is not life-threatening, what's going on here. Not really. Now, it is threatening to the ego, and you can have compassion for that. But, it's like that thing that experience that I had when I was at the ashram. I was just visiting the first time Baba's third world tour. It wasn't my first time, it was second time really seeing Baba, third time. But in any case, I was thinking, I didn't really want to go back to my job. I wanted to just be with Baba. But it didn't seem like a very practical thing to do. And I was debating about it. And it was the first time I ever heard a voice. And it just said, go with the love in your heart, not the fear in your mind. You see? So the fear is, it happens. It's not an unnatural thing. It happens in these circumstances, but you just can't go with it. You can't follow it because, following the path of fear it's not going to be good for you. You see? If your heart is in this, then just make that number one, and whatever fear arises, and you just have to go through it. You just have to be able to stand up to it and move forward. You see, so it's like, it's okay to feel afraid, just don't let that stand in your way. That's James Taylor. But still a good quote. So, you see, just recognize that this, for the ego, is scary. The ego is a very simple little tool that is scared by a number of things, some of them rational, some irrational. Okay? Just don't let that be your guide. Fear is not your guide in this situation. Now, if there's a fire in the house, let fear be your guide. But this is not a fire in your house. Okay? It's much worse than that. But it's all right. This is different. It's not a physical threat. It's a threat, but not a physical threat. And basically what you're doing, you see, the ego has several tools with which it can command some authority. And fear is one of the biggest. That's when it pulls out all the stops to get your attention, to get you to do what it wants you to do. It evokes fear, you see. And so you can just see it for what it is. Don't be fooled. Don't choose to go in that direction, or if you do, just see how messed up it is, you see. So it's just the ego. You've got to realize, yeah, it's the ego. That's all. That's what the fear is. The fear is the ego. And, you would expect the ego to have some fear about this process, which eliminates it.
Right.
It's a big deal for the ego. It seems like it is. But really, if you talk to the ego and just say, hey, this is not, I'm offering you early retirement because you've done such a good job. You can retire now. You won't have to work so hard. Try and work with the ego and convince it this might be a good idea after all. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, just you can work with it, but recognize it for what it is. That's all. It's fear. It's ego.
Right.
And see how it goes. Let me know. Keep me informed.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
It's actually a good sign. You see, it means it's starting to cut deep. So, that's good. That's good. You want that to come up.
Right.
And the only thing is you just don't want it to stop you.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Lanny.
Thank you. Oh, yeah. Where is, oh, it's over there.
So Ananta,
Yeah.
question. I wondered if you could talk about love and the difference between universal or unconditional love versus conditional or personal love. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, okay. Wasn't sure because you weren't on the screen.
Oh, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. And then the follow-up to that is, can the I or the me even experience such a thing as unconditional love? Or not?
Well, the me, the ego, is always conditional because the ego is thinking about itself. You see? So the reason that the guru-disciple relationship works is because the guru is not self-interested. So whatever he's telling you is for you. It's not, there's no other strings in there. So it's clean.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on a personal level, you're only going to know conditional love. But here's the thing. So I hung out with my gurus as much as I could, and there was a feeling. There was a feeling that I could feel around them. I called it Shakti, but it was like this overwhelming sense of peace. And I always felt 100% accepted by my gurus, which is love. You see, all of this is another word for love.
Right.
So, but it's clean love, like totally clean. So it can be described as peace or acceptance. It can be described in a lot of ways. It's not personal love, but it's way more overwhelming than that, you see. For me, it was palpable, that feeling. And I couldn't pinpoint it. When I was a disciple, I knew it was love. I did know it. But it was more than that. And it is more than that. But it isn't more than that, because love is everything too, you see. So, but it was a love that was like hooked into universal love. So it was much bigger than any love that I knew as an individual, you see.
Oh, I guess.
So that's how I learned to recognize it. And then when it came in my own process, when the ego was whittling away, and there was this process of just loving myself, I could tell if it was conditional or not by if it felt like my gurus. You see, so I could recognize it because of that. So they really showed me the way. Just by being, they showed me the way, what is correct and what isn't. So as soon as it was off, I could feel it was off. I could feel the ego had slid in there somehow. It wasn't the same feeling. And then it would just get cleaned up until it was, and it was, and it was. And then there was no difference, you see. And then that's all there was. So yes, you can know what it is, and it's not an experience really, because it's too big for that. There are personal experiences around it, but that's not what it is. But you can recognize it. I mean, you sat with me enough, you've been in enough satsangs. I think you know what that feeling is. You know, I think you know what the feeling is. So there it is. You already know what it is. And when it's around you, when it's with you, you'll recognize it. Okay? And when it's off, you'll see that it's off. And then it's just your job to see the ego and expose it. And as that happens more and more, it'll just get cleaner and cleaner until it's all scrubbed up. Okay?
Right. Yes.
Good.
Very good.
Thanks.
Thank
That
you.
answered it then. Good. This is a good idea.
So I think you want us to feel okay even when we don't feel okay. Because I used to think that when I was going to be spiritual, I'd be feeling really good. And of course, that's not what we're learning. That's not what I'm hearing. It's just accepting everything.
Yeah. So in other words, if you're happy, it's accepted. If you're sad, it's accepted. If you're laughing, it's accepted. If you're angry, it's accepted. So that sense of acceptance is peace. And what happens is it's always the same. It never changes. So that sense of being, that sense of presence, that sense of complete acceptance is an unchanging thing, and it just doesn't matter how angry you get, or how upset you get, or how happy you are. That sense of acceptance is a constant through it all, you see? So that's when you're in that state, and I'm saying acceptance right now, but I could say stillness, that state of just being with everything as it is and as it isn't, without lifting a finger to try and make it better or worse or improve it or try and keep it or try and get rid of it, all that stuff. You just don't get involved. You're just being with it as it is. And then life just goes on, but your place is a constant. It's a constant. Now, the mind is always coming up with new stuff. In this world here, everything is constantly moving around. And moods change, and thoughts change, and feelings change, and bodies change. And you have good days, and you have bad days, and all these things constantly changing. But you're not, you see, because your place is always the same. You are simply being with what is. And that is a constant. And you see, that becomes what's really going on. Because it's unchanging, you can trust it. You know it's real. It's eternal. It'll be forever unchanging. Forever that will be there. The rest of this stuff is all temporary. This body's temporary. Your feelings are temporary. Your thoughts are temporary. It's like, why get involved with them? They're unreliable. The only thing that is reliable about everything in this world is that it will come and go. No matter how upset you are, it will come and go. No matter how good you feel, it will come and go. That's the only thing that's reliable in this world of change, is change. You see? Why would you want to hook your horse to that? You see? Because it's constantly moving around. So hook your horse to something that is stable. And that is this sense of being, this sense of stillness, of peace. That's stable. It's always there. If you look, you'll see it's always there. There's a stillness that all of your thoughts come from, that everything comes from. Just switch sides, okay? You know, you've done most of your life with your mind as your best friend, and it's like, you have to look, has this really served you? Maybe you could get a better friend. One that you can rely upon, even if the body's not here. It doesn't matter, you see? That help?
Ananta,
Yeah.
hi. So I had a question very similar to Tracy's, so I'm going to change my question. But I was going to ask how your life was different before and after, and that's essentially what you were just talking about. You know, it became, you know, peaceful. So I'm wondering, was that was that a gradual thing that the peace became more and more, or was it something that happened like, you know, you wake up one day and it's just totally different?
It's a little bit of both. There's a gradual process that goes on while the ego is being diminished. There's a sense of ambivalence about things. I remember I was with Ramesh and I said to him, I said, Ramesh, my enthusiasm for life seems to have really gone down a lot. And I think that's your fault. And he said, yeah, I think it probably is. You see, so there was a process, but the actual switch just happens. And, you know, look, I know there's all these great stories about, you know, like this amazing switch. It wasn't like that with me. Okay, it was almost so subtle that it didn't seem like it could be what it was. You see? It seemed subtle. At first it seemed totally subtle. So that's, you don't know what it's going to be, but it was total, and I did notice it in the moment. I noticed it because I talked to a few people about it. You see, so I did notice, but I remember saying, and I said this the last talk, that, you know, if this is enlightenment, it's not what I was seeking. You see, because after having a whole lifetime of personal experiences, I was certainly thinking the enlightenment was going to be a really great personal experience. And it wasn't. It wasn't a personal experience at all. You see? So it's almost like it just switches sides. So like the primary thing was me. It was always me. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm thinking this. I'm thinking that. This is what I feel. Me. There was always the me was there. And then it just switched, and it switched to nobody. So it wasn't like it switched to another identity. It's just where that identity was now empty. And all there was being, you see? Where that identity used to be, it wasn't replaced by anything. It's just that what was always there, but I didn't know it because the personal identity was so strong. That's what remained, what was always there. So it wasn't, so I experienced it as subtle. And just the me was gone. And it wasn't like it was like black and white gone. There was still, you know, thoughts would still arise. Well, yeah, I know, I hear this, you know, the ego is annihilated and there's no thoughts, and that's bullshit. If there's no thoughts, then you just sit in the corner and poop your pants, right? You know, there has to be a thought to tell you, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Oh, I'm hungry. Oh, you know, it's like there's still going to be thoughts, and every single one of my gurus answered to their name. So there was still something there. There's just, what happens is none of it is personalized anymore. So there's no one thinking that they are. So in other words, you watch a cartoon and you might laugh and you might, you know, interact about it and say, oh, that's fun, this and that. But no part of you thinks that you're that cartoon character. You're just watching it, you see? So it's like that. So this cartoon character had anyone participating.
Well, what you're saying sort of reminds me a little bit of Lanny's question, maybe some fear of, or maybe putting it a different way, of losing something. So you mentioned that going through the process, your enthusiasm for things got less, and I wonder if that was something you lost. And so a sort of follow up to that is, do you ever like miss what you were before?
No, I think I wrote a joke about, about abandoning the ego, and, the world of abandoned egos and all that stuff. It was a fun little writing I did a long time ago, but no, because the person who would miss it isn't there. You see? So it's like that doesn't come up. You see? So no, and the fear that came up in the process was just something to be faced. And once it was faced, you see, it didn't have any more power. It lost its power. So you see, the ego was gradually getting diminished. And I do remember someone who knew me well during this process had noticed I had changed. And she was drilling me, what is different? Because she noticed something had changed. And she said, well, do you have like better self-esteem now? And I said, no, I have less self-esteem. You see? And that was during that transition, toward the end, of course. You see? So that's basically what happens. And fear can arise, it can do whatever it wants. The ego can do whatever it wants. As long as you're attached to it, the ego, then it's going to be trouble for you. But when no one has any strings to the ego, has any sense of that is who they are, then all this can go on and no one cares. That's all. That's all it is. And like I said, at first it seemed, and even now, listening to those excerpts from Nisargadatta really helped me to be able to express it, because it wasn't something I thought deeply about because I didn't need to. Everything's just the way it is, and I didn't really dive into it after to be able to explain. Now, initially some poems came out that just did explain, but then after a brief initial period, I didn't talk about it with anybody for years, for over a decade, you see. So it wasn't something that I really concerned myself with. It's not like I sit around thinking about enlightenment all the time. I don't think about it at all. It never comes up in my mind. And during that time, that decade, you would have thought it would have come up, but not one time in one conversation did it come up. There were a few people who knew, but they knew it on their own. But, the people that I knew, we lived on the Big Island in Hobby, and no one there knew. It never came up, not once. Not once. People would come into the shop and they go, wow, the energy in here is so great. It's so nice. Wow. It's like they put it all in the shop. Not a single person thought it was me. So it's great. We had kind of a spiritual section in the back with statues and really nice artifacts. And that's what it was. The big Ganesha there. So, you know, it's much more and much less than you imagine it to be.
Thank you.
Yeah, did that answer it for you?
Yeah, yes, yes.
Okay. It's really, I'm learning to talk about it more because I think it's helpful. Now, I noticed listening to Nisargadatta, he's really bold about it sometimes. He's like describing his state, you know, where he lives compared to where you live. And, you know, it's like, whoa, you know, I've never been like that. A little bit more now. After hearing him, I got kind of permission to use that as a teaching tool where it helps. And then I listened to Ramesh, and he was out there about it too. So that was just me, because my initial upbringing was probably better not to talk about it. So anyway, so in that way it's changed. I think it helps communicate it, that's all. Just helps to communicate, because you get an idea, you get a feeling for what it is that I'm talking about. A feeling, anyway, you know, a sense of it. And really what it is that I could feel the energy around my gurus. I could feel it. It was palpable to me. And that was all I needed to know. Ultimately, that was it. And ultimately, that was the spiritual practice that I was consistent with throughout my sadhana. That was hanging out with enlightened beings and just being in that energy. And that's what Ramesh said, the teaching is passed in silence. And I never understood it. I believed it because he said it. But I never understood it until after. And he was correct. That stillness, that sense that I could feel around my gurus taught me everything. That taught me everything. And I thought it was the concepts and the words, my understanding, and all of that that was really the thing. But the real thing came in silence. It's the thing that I felt in their presence, that can't be put into words anyway. Couldn't be understood.
Do you think meeting on Zoom somehow detracts a little from that experience?
No, I don't. I'll tell you why. That energy that I'm talking about has absolutely no limitation. So when it comes to time and space, that is no limitation at all for that energy. That's why a lot of enlightened beings really become way big after they die. During their lifetime, they have small followings. After they die, thousands of people come, and they all have experiences. And, you know, it's like really intense, because it's not limited to time and space at all. If I were to die tomorrow, I would be 100% with you like I am now. Absolutely. If you tuned in, I would be there. I know this for fact, okay? Because right now, there's a bunch of enlightened beings who are here right now, who are no longer in the body. But they're here 100% and just as strong as when I was sitting right next to them. So I know this is so. This thing, this state, this your true place is way beyond any limitation of time and space. Okay? I say, you know, who that you are is eternal. Okay? That's just a word I'm using to describe what limitless, what timeless, beyond time, what that is. You see, it's not really eternal because eternal is time. You see? And this is beyond time, but it's the best word I've got for you, you know, but there's absolute, yes. So right now I'm with you as if I were sitting with you, but it's always like that. You become aware of it during satsang because we're here talking. And so there's some more awareness of it. But when you are solid in your place, that I'm here, I'm there. Right now, I'm there. Right now, I am with you 100%. You're just somewhere else a little bit. Your attention is drawn elsewhere, but that doesn't matter. And so yeah, the Zoom doesn't matter. Zoom or in person or 1,000 years from now, doesn't matter. It's all the same. And I'm convinced that this is so. I know it's so. Mm-hmm. So Shree, Baba, Ramesh are 100% here right now. So that would include Nisargadatta because it's Ramesh. We're all here. The whole gang is here. And it's with you all the time. So take it on faith, if nothing else. And you'll see when the silence takes over that it is so. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Just to add a little bit, the Dalai Lama turned 85 and had a live thing on the computer a few days ago. And when I tuned in, it felt like a shower.
Sweet.
It's sort of like a purified feel, you know, and he's all the way in India. And there were millions of people online at that time.
Oh.
So things like that are pretty fun.
I'll have to watch a replay of it. I saw it up on my on one of my Google searches here.
Yeah, he's doing pretty good for 85. Bless him. Yeah, he's still speaking beautifully and glowing.
Yes, Pam.
So I have a question, and it might take me a while to get it all out.
Well, we have.
So, all right. Well, great. So my mind is kind of playing with this idea. So when you're in a state of witnessing all the time, witnessing with love, peace, stillness, and silence, the egos play. The egos play, its feelings, thoughts, whatever, just pass like clouds for you. Correct?
I'll say yes. You're putting it into words, so it's not exact, but yeah, go ahead.
Yes, it's sort of like that, but words can't explain it. So in neurolinguistic programming, which I was trained in, there was first position, second position, and third position. First position is you are in your body. You know when you have to go to the bathroom. You know when you're hungry. You are experiencing your own feelings. Second position is when you jump into somebody else's body, it's really compassion. You can see their point of view. You can feel what they're feeling. And a lot of therapists are really good at second position. Third position, and this is where my question is starting to arise for you to answer, is the witness. You can witness, what's going on, like you're a fly on the wall. You can witness, and it's out of the spirit of balance and curiosity. You're watching your interactions with people, and you can observe and all that. So then you have that, but that is different. That witnessing is on a much lower level than your state of being, of enlightenment. But then you also have the factor which is of disassociation, where you are disassociated from your body, and it's a psychological term, and you are watching everything, and it's a state so of being that is useful, but not all the time to survive. So I guess I just wanted to talk to you about the nuances of differences. And I know words can't really explain anything, but anyway.
Well, now the first two are strictly ego involvement. I mean,
Yes.
Okay, so that's just state of ego. And the third one is also, the way you describe it, still ego driven. But so now it's hard because, we're still trying to talk about it. And anytime you put it into words, it's not what it is. But the witnessing is there, but there's no witnesser. You understand? So the witnessing is impersonal. It's just a state of being without any strings attached at all. Okay? So there is no witnesser, but there is witnessing happening. It's like a watching. The disassociation is just that no one thinks about themselves personally anymore. So you have your feelings, you have your actions, you have your thoughts. Well, there may be thoughts, feelings, and actions, but there's no one personally relating to any of that. So it's just being watched, the same as it would be watched in any case with anyone, you see. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that was very helpful. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Did that answer?
Yes. I think that the no personalization and that the witnessing of in neurolinguistic programming, the third position, that's still very personal.
Yes. Yeah. All of it is a play of the ego. In the scenario that you relayed to me, it sounded like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's so this is pretty hardcore. Like, it's not for everybody because people want to have a hand in it, and they want to, like, people want enlightenment like a possession, like it were something that they could have. That's the idea, is if you're going to have this deep spiritual experience, that you get to have the experience, you see? But it's so deep And it's so large, the real thing, that it won't confine itself to something as small as personal. You see? So it won't allow itself to be limited in that way. It becomes something else then. Becomes, you see, so the ego maintains its position through acquisition. And so it attempts to acquire this enlightenment, or whatever spiritual experience you have, it takes ownership of. I had this experience. It says it's an experience, you see, and what's an experience? An experience is a perception totally limited to time and space. And it's got to be small because it's a perception that the mind can perceive. And the mind can only perceive small things, you see. So the key here is to understand that the who that you are is way, 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 way on like another planet compared to the who that you think you are. The who that you think you are is very, very small. And it's something that you can fit into your mind and your body. You can absorb it. But the who that you truly are, it absorbs you, and not only you, everything. It's in everything all of the time. It's way beyond, this is like a hammer trying to understand a computer. Can't do it. It's not the right tool. Okay? So as soon as the mind, as soon as that distance is sufficient, that disassociation is sufficient, then you can know something that you couldn't possibly understand. But you can know it because it's who you are. You see, so you know it, just like that feeling that I had with my gurus was so awesome. I couldn't figure it out. It was so awesome. All I knew is I wanted to be around it. And whatever it was, I wanted that. And I wanted that more than anything else. You see, now I could never have it. I didn't understand that, but I stayed true to that commitment, and it ended up winning the game. You see? Yeah.
Do you think those of us that have been with you for a long time now have tasted enough that there's no turning back? That it's like beyond our control and we're hooked and we're not in control anymore, sort of.
Well, I think it has a will of its own. And I think that what happens with the amount of exposure that you've had is that it's something that you will forever recognize when it's correct. So it's a gift because as you go on your path, you'll know what's right and what isn't. Like you'll know it, instinctually you'll know it, because you'll know what it feels like, you see? So that's the gift of this satsang and being in that energy, is it gives you a baseline from which you can recognize what it is I'm talking about. Yeah, and in your case, you're forever hooked. I was with Baba. I knew I was hooked. That was it, you know. He had me, and he knew he had me. Sucker.
It's one of those things that once you taste it, you can't untaste it. Or once you see it, you know it, it's there. And
Yeah, exactly. But you see, not everyone has the attraction like you. But you know, it's innate in you. And you know, so that thing is really what you're seeing in me is what is in you. You just don't know it yet. But you'll find out, and then you'll see that what you see in me is who you are. And it's just a reminder. So I always had that feeling with Ramesh. It was like meeting an old friend for the last time, but it was like an old friend that you see, it was like he was that essence, that old friend, that thing that I was, that I always was. I thought it was him for the longest time. I thought it was my gurus, you see, but it wasn't. It was us. We were all there together. And it just took me longer to get to realize that, you see. Mm-hmm. But it happened. It happened. Yes.
So I forgot what you said, the term before, taste of enlightenment, or little desserts of enlightenment, or whatever you used. But I've had those in my life. But I think what was behind my question today was when the confusion or the doubt or the discouragement kind of seeps in momentarily, and then I get confused. So can you talk about when we have these not remembrance kind of moments?
Doubt is this, it's just like fear for the ego. It's a way of putting the brakes on. Okay, so, if you have doubt in your marriage is in trouble. If you have doubt in your career is in trouble. So doubt it's like a yield sign at the best. And it might be a stop sign, and it might be a U-turn, you see. So recognize it for what it is. It's the mind's way of trying to get you to obey it. Okay? And so here's the deal. What's happened is you have a mind. Okay? It's a very useful tool in this world. You have mistakenly identified with your mind as being you. What happens when you mistakenly identify with the mind being you, now the roles are switched. You no longer have a mind, the mind has you. You see? So the mind will assert its position with you, and as long as it can get away with it, it will. Okay, so just watch your mind try and take control over you. And just watch it do that, and watch it get away with it or not. The thing is, you have this basic belief that the mind's thoughts are your thoughts. The mind's feelings are your feelings.
Right.
That this body's actions are your actions. That belief is not serving you. And what it's doing is it's creating a situation where something that is meant to be a tool has become your master. Okay? The positions are out of balance here. So you want to recognize how that's working and see if you can break free from this, you see, and get the position correct. Okay? So it's like this. You are wearing a pair of shoes. You would never, ever think those shoes were wearing you. You have a mind. Why would you ever think that that mind has you? You see, you have a pair of shoes. You don't think you are those pair of shoes. You have a pair of shoes. They're very useful. You wouldn't want to be walking around without them. Good. It's a useful tool. But where it goes over is where you start believing in things that aren't real. Okay? You start believing in all these temporary, constantly changing things. And it's no wonder people need a therapist, because they're believing in crazy shit. They're believing in these thoughts and feelings that are constantly changing. It's enough to make anyone nuts. You know, let the thoughts come, let them go. Let them come, let them go. Let everything come, let everything go. Just live your life like it's a constant meditation. Do not fall into the trap of identifying with things that are constantly changing, because the who that you are is eternal. It's unchanging. And that's what's real in this world, is that which never changes. And maybe this world was not correct, but that's what's real. It is in this world, but this world is basically, you're living in a virtual reality. It's not real. It just appears to be real. And it's, a good virtual reality is very good at capturing your attention and making you believe that something that isn't real is real, and that's what it's doing. And so you got this body, mind, and it's doing its job, and you're taking it for a ride. And, if you're not interested, you can get off the ride and let the ride go on its own.
It's like we've given the brain so much credit.
Yeah.
I was thinking, I don't identify with my liver.
Yeah.
And then learned in school that the liver's where the anger is, and your gut's where your worry is, and your heart, So we even tried to personalize all our organs.
What a mess. That's good. I want to give everyone a chance. If there's anything else that someone wants to say. Good then.
Well, I do want to say I usually feel lighter and healthier and better after our satsang. So something does happen. I guess I was thinking about Pam and a free sample. So we all get a little free sample when we sit with you.
I think that's true. Yeah, that was my experience with my gurus too. That's, you get a taste of it, even if it's not what you think it is. You get a taste of it, and I know it's the correct thing from what happened. You are getting a direct experience of what it is that I'm actually talking about. Before any words got attached to it, it's there with you now. So of course you're going to leave with that feeling. I used to live for that feeling, That was my main thing, was to be around that. I would, every moment I could, be around it. So, good. We'll sit quietly for a short time. Try and bring that feeling into your space. Keep it with you, and make the commitment not to forget. See what happens. Good then.